Hello everybody, my name is June Hlongwane. So this week I just want to focus on Floyd Shivambu, who is again shaking things up. I must say that before he left EFF to join MKP, he's really one of those people that I wouldn't really notice. He was kind of unnoticeable, somewhere in the background, very kind of quiet. Okay, there was a VBA scandal, which was quite big, involving his brother. But I mean, other than that, he really wasn't on the forefront, especially when it comes to making headlines, like what has happened since he left the EFF in August of 2024, joining MKP, and then now, as of 2 days ago, when he held that press briefing, saying a mouthful, and I mean, getting everyone talking. So a bit of an interesting sort of turn there. In preparation for this video, I was just kind of looking at Floyd Shivambu, the political, they call him like an intellectual and all of that. I was just trying to get a gist of that to understand, his process and all of that. And I don't know, I just found his mission in politics to be rather confusing based on some of the utterances that he's made, leading up to this point. And I'm also interested to know, what do you guys make of Floyd Shivambu's political career and his journey? Let me know in the comment section. What do you guys make of it? Do you still think he is, the strategic chess player type, who is very sharp and knows exactly what he's doing? From where I'm sitting, it's a bit confusing, right? Because when I look back at some of the things that he said, one moment, Floyd Shivambu is speaking about the left side or the progressive parties, the need for them to come together and form an alliance and be united. Then he's speaking about how the ANC is lost, it's a lost cause, it has no direction. And during the press conference, from that, 1 hour, 50-minute sort of press briefing that he had, from that briefing alone, he said so much that kind of further creates confusion for me in terms of exactly what is up here. Speaking about the ANC being a traitor, labeling the EFF as a cult, saying the EFF is lost and clueless. He made some point about, why he left, that he could not exhaust his intellectual ability in the EFF because whatever they were doing, maybe to him it didn't make any sense. He then speaks about if MK Party doesn't need him anymore, he's perfectly fine with that. And then in there, they're speaking about no turning back. He's not going back to the ANC, nor is he going back to the EFF. And also, in the same breath, speaking about some sort of a new political movement that is in the works. I don't know, quite the unpredictable character. And I definitely think that it does create the interest around Floyd Shivambu. But I think what's also interesting about the political terrain in South Africa particularly, is that if the political party is bigger, right, there's really not much you can do to top that. You can't really beat that system. In the case of when the political leader or the party leader is bigger, right, there's also very little you can do about that. And I think Floyd Shivambu is somewhere in the middle there, right? MK Party, definitely bigger than Floyd. ANC, bigger than Floyd. And then if you go to the side of the EFF, Julius Malema is bigger than Floyd. So Floyd Shivambu is somewhere in the middle there. And I think the biggest risk, when you're operating in a political terrain like what we have in South Africa, is that he is at a risk of becoming a political wanderer and just kind of becoming not really here, but not really there. And I think that could essentially be the end of Floyd Shivambu. Sorry to say it for people who support him, but I think that is just the risk, right? That where does he go? MK Party would survive, I think, for the long run and could do just fine without him. And I also think that EFF, having Julius Malema, that also does give them a lot of credibility. Julius Malema does remain quite the draw card for people who are aligned with that thinking and all of that. So now you've got Floyd in the middle. If he's obviously not dropping all these bombs and having press conferences, really, what else is there to offer? And that's just another perspective when it comes to the career of Floyd Shivambu. But enough with sort of that background. I want to just get into the one clip that was quite interesting for me that I just want to weigh on and give commentary on from the press conference that he held.
Although there were dynamics, like part of the things which I used to appreciate about EFF was that I knew that foundationally I came with the idea of funding the EFF. It's true. one of the things that used to give me a lot of joy was to see a lot of people whose lives would change, employed by the EFF as councillors, as members of parliament, as staff members, build homes for their parents, buy cars and everything else. I was like, I can't be part of the stabilizing an organization that, at least from that point of view, is giving people sustainable livelihoods. That I will never do. I will never be engaged in such a...
So Floyd Shivambu in this clip speaks about how when he was in the EFF, the only thing that he's proud of is, how he was able to play a role in giving people an opportunity to have their own things and, earn, buy houses, buy cars, and so forth. And I hate to say it, but ladies and gentlemen, this is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy because Floyd Shivambu is a Marxist. EFF is a Marxist organization. This is what they tell us, that they're a Marxist organization. And there's just certain principles and rules that, make or guide them to become a Marxist organization. One of which is opposing capital accumulation. One of which is supporting things like expropriation, land expropriation without compensation, right? Which I think it kind of begs the question for me that when they say they are anti-capital accumulation, when they say they want to expropriate, does that only apply to people who, they don't like? Does this only apply, or is this only limited to the sort of mission of we are only doing so because we want to correct the injustices of the past? Because from where I'm standing, or at least from where I am standing, the risk is that this very same ideology of Marxism that they are putting so forefront and just telling us about how they want to do this and do this and do this. Initially, it can be seen as though it's all about correcting the injustice of the past and all of that. It's all about, fixing the issues, getting the settler and the colonial balance and all of those things. But we do know that the very same ideology that they support, in many instances, has spilled beyond the race, beyond the settler, beyond the colonial ties and all of these other things, into things like ethnicity, into things like cultural groups, into class, which I think begs or creates the biggest risk for you and I. For example, EFF is a big supporter of the writings from Frantz Fanon, who speaks about ridding yourself of any colonial elements and just freeing yourself completely, not just in terms of economic standpoints and all of that, but also culturally taking back what was once yours. The question is, if they lead with the very same ideology, who is to say that you and I would be safe? Because even if you take the argument that they make about why they are Marxists, even if you take the argument that, no, the reason why we follow this ideology is because we believe the only way to change the material conditions of the poor is through redistribution. Maybe that is what they believe is the path in order to really bring about improvement and change. I personally disagree with the idea of redistribution because, things run out eventually. You'd rather have more and kind of generate more over time as opposed to taking what's already existing and redistributing that. It doesn't really solve the problem. But let's just say that is the case. I would also then follow up with the question and ask the question that why is it that their members are benefiting before the public does? Why is it that their own members who are loyal to the party, who are already serving in those structures, why are those people benefiting before the poor? If the whole idea of the reason why they are telling us about this Marxist idea is in order to create redistribution, in order to change the material conditions of the people, if there's so much money going around and there's so much availability within the EFF structure that people are able to buy cars and buy houses, the question is, why isn't that being equally distributed to help the poor first? Because if anything, you rather lead by example if you are so strong on these beliefs. I'm going to quote Thomas Sowell whilst we're on this very topic. And the quote says that it is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. In any circumstance, this contrast between ideology and action, which is what we're seeing with Floyd Shivambu, where they speak Marxism, that's ideology, but the action is that they're just looking out for themselves, looking out for their members. In any circumstance, this type of contrast would have dire consequences. There would be a cost. Think about if you're running a business. Think about in your personal life. You cannot speak one thing and then do the other. Even in personal relationships, that would cost you greatly in terms of people trusting you, right? So there would be consequences. But in the instance of left politics, that is just not the case. Thomas Sowell makes another reference in the many writings that he's done about sort of this political ideology, which he deems is quite problematic, and I quite agree. He makes another reference, not really quoting verbatim, but he speaks about how an engineer is judged by the structure. Let's say an engineer is tasked to work on a bridge. The engineer is judged by that bridge holding up, that bridge not collapsing, that bridge being completed on time, on the budgeted cost and all of that. That is the criteria. But intellectuals, political left, and all of these other people are not judged by the consequences that come from the ideas that they hold. They're not. So there's absolutely no cost, and it is absolutely dangerous, again, that in South Africa you have millions of people who support the idea, who fall for the idea, rather, that these guys are, whatever they're saying is the way to go, that these guys are going to eradicate inequality, they're going to help and improve their conditions. But instead, they are saying one thing, speaking one thing on the one side, and on the other side, they are seeming, or it looks like they're building ecosystems around the state, around government, in order to be able to enrich themselves and to benefit themselves. This is exactly what is happening. Basically, all I'm saying, right, and now I'm going to conclude, all I'm saying is we have to challenge the political left. And I speak about political left particularly a lot in this channel, not because the right is perfect. I don't think the right is perfect in any way. But the reason why I think we should challenge the political left is because we would lose a lot if whatever they're speaking about actually came to fruition. Because if you listen to the rhetoric, the left is saying we need to dismantle everything that currently exists and rebuild. That is the message. Destroy, dismantle, start again. And that might sound like quite a hopeful dream. Some people might really, get going when they hear that. But the risk is that, is it even possible? What would that look like? Because that is the risk. We stand to lose a lot. And as it stands, there's just no accountability when it comes to the left. No accountability whatsoever. They say one thing, do another. Life goes on. We are witnessing this happening in real time. It is happening now, where people get into politics, big talk, say a lot of things, and then all we tend to just find out is that, oh, this person took this money and, meaning they're just using this as a vehicle for them to just benefit themselves, yet they make all of these promises and people buy into it. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I think it's time we really interrogate some of these ideas. Thank you guys for checking out this video. Before you go, I'm going to remind you again and again, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do subscribe. Please also like this video. I'd really appreciate your support, and I look forward to seeing you again next week when I drop a brand new video.